I'm probably going to do the most unusual talk of this entire conference. We were on the radio, we were talking, and as if any of you know me a little bit or know what I'm into, I have a tremendous passion for sport being a means for developing virtue. And in our culture and society today, that is obviously not seen as the norm. And so the writing of the book, by the way, I get nothing from the book. Matter of fact, I got tricked into writing that book. But I wrote the book to support Belmont Abbey College and to also make the point that world-class performance and virtue are not mutually exclusive. Matter of fact, world-class performance is a form of virtue, but it's only one of them. And I'm looking for all of them. And so you can imagine, I sort of had to do a little gymnastics to figure out, well, how am I going to take a sports-related talk at a pro-life conference and make that work? But actually, I don't think it's too hard to do. If we look at sport today in our culture and our society, there isn't much else like it that affects the entire world. If you just look at what's spent on sport, it's close to $1 trillion a year, just in terms of the revenues that are involved with sports activities. You look at the politics involved with it. You look at religious issues that are involved with it. It affects everybody. Now, I've had some people say to me, well, I don't like sports and I don't really go to them. I said, well, you've gotten probably caught in stadium traffic before. I mean, so directly, indirectly, you have been affected by sport in some way, and we all have. But I will tell you that I found basically two responses to what we see in the world of sport today. And I will start off by saying, and I'll give you this caveat or this premise, I've worked with hundreds of professional athletes, and I will tell you the ones that I've worked with are incredibly good people. You would love to be friends with them. They're, you know, with the NFL players I work with, at least the ones I worked with, they were tremendous Christians. They were great fathers. They were great husbands. I mean, seriously, the kind you just love to be friends with. Unfortunately, you hardly ever hear about any of them at all. All you tend to hear about are the drugs, the guns, the cheating, and whatever else we can come up with. You know, ESPN typically, I think 9 out of 10 stories are somehow, you know, full of despair. So somebody's done something terrible, and that's what we're talking about. And so because of that, sport has really become in some ways the poster child for vice. If you think of the 7 deadly sins, pride, anger, envy, sloth, I mean, we go on, they're all there on full display. And so we've come to look at it that way, and what ends up happening is if you look at college athletics, it looks a lot like pro athletics in a way. And then you see it down to high school level, and you see it even down to the grade school and the youth level. There's all kinds of attitudes and ways that we are carrying ourselves that are completely inappropriate and certainly aren't going to go and help us develop virtue, if you will, in what we're doing. So the pro-life connection I thought we could make here is that, just to give you one example, does anybody watch NFL football at all? Does anybody watch any games? Okay. Have you ever seen such big, strong men running around in pink anywhere else in your life? I mean, you know, the Cancer Society has figured out that sport, and especially the NFL, that is a way to get a hold of the culture and society and get them serious about something. Well, why, from a pro-life standpoint, aren't we doing the very same thing? And so the two reactions I've sort of seen, and perspectives on sport today, is one of two. First one is, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff in it. You know, there's profanities. I can read lips on the sideline, unfortunately. You know, I see people with no clothes on practically. I see all kinds of terrible things going on. And I just, you know, this is just terrible. But, you know, what are you going to do about it? That's just the way it is. I don't like it that way. But, you know, what are we going to do about it? And so we still go to the games. We still watch it on TV. We still participate. We're, you know. And by the way, none of that exists if we don't support it. And right now, I will tell you, I've spoken to millions of people at this point, between radio, TV, you know, in person. I have never met a group or an audience. I've never had one person come up to me and say, terrible idea, the sport and virtue thing. People only come up to me and say, how do we do that? You know, what are we going to do? How do we begin to change it? So the vast majority of us are all thinking this way. And yet, we have sort of resigned to the fact that, well, no, it's just me, I'm sort of alone. It's a little bit like what the Soviet Union did. If you're as old as me with a white beard, you have a better recollection of it perhaps. But what they did was this. They put a spy, they put an informer on every block and in every building. And so even though you lived amongst millions, you felt completely isolated and alone because you didn't know who you could trust. And in many ways today, there's a similarity. all of us, and that's what's great about this conference, and Molly putting this on, and everybody else that's helped put this on, is to bring people together so that we realize we are not alone. And by the way, you may say, well, yeah, but it's just us, in this room. It's just us. We're in this together. And I'm thinking, no, there's tens of millions of people like us, but we're not coming together. And so the media and the world today has in a way isolated each of us, our families, and we sort of feel like we're the last remnant. I'm hunkered down in my house, and we're going to do the right thing. We're going to be virtuous. We're going to do good things. We have faith, but the rest of the world, it's gone. It's not true, and we've got to stop thinking that way about this. And so we got to take back sport. Now, the other extreme I've encountered is it is horrendous. It is terrible. I want nothing to do with it, so I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. Both approaches, I would argue, are the wrong ones. We can't do it. We've got to take back this industry. We've got to take back what sport was meant to be. We cannot allow it to exist as it exists today. And if we did, we would not only change what's happening on the fields and the courts around the country, but for efforts as important as and central to who we are is protecting the human person, protect the baby in the womb, we would have a powerful way of going about doing that. My approach to working with athletics is very much as St. John Paul II would have talked about, the understanding of the human person, the whole person, body, mind, and soul. Very often, because we talk about things, we will end up putting them in compartments. And we split them out, and we say, well, over here we're going to talk about the mental skills. Over here we're going to do some training, and over here we're going to pray maybe. So, end of an NFL game, I'm not complaining about this, I think it's great. Everybody kneels down, says a prayer. But if during the game I'm poking your eye out, I'm cursing at you, and I'm trying to take your knee out, there's a little bit of a disconnect for me at the end of the game where we're all going to kneel down and pray. Okay, so the point is, it's integrated. I'm body, mind, and spirit, and so are you at the same fraction of a second. They're not these boxes or compartments. And therefore, it's important that we approach it this way. And I'll just give you an example, because people have said to me, yeah, but how do you do that? I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to describe an example to you. I've worked with a lot of NFL wide receivers. And I was working with this one guy. I won't say his name, because what I'm going to tell you, I won't say his name. But anyway, he's running these routes, which are patterns. He runs out 10 yards, cuts 5 yards, right? And I'm throwing him balls. And as you can see, I'm really tall, I have long arms, and before I had a white beard, I could throw a ball pretty hard, Now I can barely get to my seat. So I'm throwing him these passes, and about the 8th or 9th pass, he drops the ball. And when he drops the ball, he yells out a really bad word. And I'm not going to say what it was, but it was a bad word, okay? And I looked at him and I said, what did you say? And he kind of looks at me a little sheepishly, and he goes, well, I dropped the ball. I said, I know you dropped the ball. I said, well, what did you say? And he kind of looks at me again and says, well, I dropped the ball. I said, I know. I said, thank you, Jesus, right? He looks at me like I hit him over the head with a 2x4, and he said, well, why am I thanking Jesus? I said, he was a Christian athlete, and I said to him, 1 Thessalonians 5:18, are you thankful in all things? He kind of looks at me and goes, yeah. I said, so, thank you, Jesus, right? He goes, thank you, Jesus? I said, good, now come on back. Okay, so he comes back, and now I say to him, what happened? It's like a blackout. He has no idea what happened. So here's the reason for saying thank you, Jesus. 2 reasons. First one is the higher argument. It's the virtue of gratitude. We are called to be thankful in all things. One night I was driving over to a talk, and I had a bottle of water, and I had an umbrella on the front seat, and I was making a turn. I'm 2 seconds away from where I'm going to speak. The umbrella swings across the car. It's one of these perfect things, right? Swings across the car, hits the bottle of water. All the water shoots up out of the bottle and lands on my lap. And I will tell you, the first thing I said was, thank you, Jesus. I really did. I know you're finding that really hard to believe, right? I did. And I'll tell you why. I've been saying it for probably 20 years. You train yourself in the small things, the really small things. And that's not even a big thing, right? I mean, when the real big things come, you want to be able to say, thank you, Jesus, right away. So anyway, the first one is gratitude. We should be thankful in all things. The second one is completely pragmatic. This is an NFL wide receiver. If he drops a ball, it's not because he can't catch. He's dropped the ball for a specific reason. But while you're out there cursing and kicking the ground, there's something he doesn't know. You know what it is? why he dropped the ball. Because he's caught up, and by the way, when you're kicking the ground and cursing, this may seem like counterintuitive. Do you know what's the basis of that? It's called the sin of pride. I've got to show you how upset I am about this because I just don't drop balls. I am so much better than this. When in fact, while you're in your pride thing, kicking the ground, cursing, you've lost the opportunity to know what actually just happened. So, as an NFL wide receiver, I'll just show you, I'm going to look like I have some kind of nervous disorder when I show this to you, but I'm going to show you how fast you can turn your head, okay? So as an NFL wide receiver, if you come up, I'm going to turn my back to you a second, pretend you're the quarterback, okay? So I come up, if I plant and then turn like that, what's going to happen is, first of all, the whole time my head's coming around, that's all blurred, and I can't actually focus until my head stops and my eyes lock on something, okay? So when you do that, suddenly a ball could be right on top of you, especially if it's thrown early. This is how fast you can turn your head. I know, see, you're like, what? What did he do? I mean, you can turn, so imagine coming out of a cut and your head snaps around that bit. You've just seen a ball 5 or 10 yards sooner. But he blacked out because he was kicking the ground cursing, didn't know he did not snap his head around. So I said to him, what happened? Of course, he gives me the complete, didn't cut right. I mean, there's a question mark at the end. He has no idea. So I tell him. So he goes out, he runs maybe another 8 or 9, and he drops another ball. And when he drops the ball, I can see it. He's about to say the word. But he stops himself, and he looks back at me, and I go, and he goes, thank you, Jesus? I said, yeah, come on back. Okay, so he comes back, I said, now tell me what happened. He says, I did not get my head around on that. I didn't snap my head around. And he was right, exactly. I said to him, perfect, exactly right. By the way, see, I don't say, hey, that's terrible, you didn't get your head around it. He knew what happened. That's the key to actually performing at a high level, is know what you did. So I said, perfect. I said, that's exactly it, right? By the end of the day, first of all, this guy's hardly dropping a ball. He's making catches that could be on the ESPN highlight reel. And if he drops one, he could be 50 yards away, and I'm hearing, thank you, Jesus! At the end of the arena, If anybody walked in, they'd think we're probably all out of our minds, at this point. But my point is, that one example I've just given you, he in that session became a better person, physically, mentally, and spiritually, and it all happened exactly at the same time. We didn't break it up and do little sessions for each kind of thing. We did it all at that moment, and it can be done that way, whether it's in competition or whether it's in practice. This idea of virtue, one year I was talking to the NFL Players Association, and all the players in the room, just like you, right? And I looked at them and I said, how many of you are trying to perfect the intellectual virtue of art? And they're all looking at me like you are right now, like, what is he talking about? Virtue of art. I mean, they thought I came into the wrong room, I'm sure, okay? So I said to them, how many of you are trying to perfect yourselves as football players? Whole room raised their hand. I said, that is the intellectual virtue of art. It's the right method of external production. If you're trying to perfect whatever it is that you're doing, you could be a carpenter, you could be a plumber, you could be a mom, you could be working in a business someplace. I mean, if you're trying to perfect that, that's that one virtue. But again, it's only one of them. And as we all know, virtues don't live in isolation. They work together. And if they're not integrated, you're unlikely to have just one of them. So my hope here in today, and trying to tie this together in the pro-life movement, is that I think sport is a powerful platform, a powerful medium for us to affect the hearts and souls. Let's just start with America. I think we can affect them in a powerful way if we understand sport, we know what it is, what it can do, and what it should be doing. So I thought I would share with you just a few little bits from the book. The book is basically broken down to 3 parts. The first one, I tried to capture some of the things that I found all my life in sport and outside of sport that almost affect everybody to some degree. And they affect the way we are able to perform and live and do what we do. Sounds like the bongo's going on next door. I mean, I'm sorry you guys you missed out. Whatever's going on over there,
Giving you a drum roll.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe. The second is playing with a passion that never ends. And the idea there is I want to give you some real insight, because if we're going to talk about sport, all of you should understand, how do you get peak performance? Like, how do you really do that? And there are ways that you specifically can do it to make it happen more often. And then the last area is actually the deepest stuff. So you almost have to read the whole book, because this book goes where you'll never be able to figure it out. Where this book starts, it doesn't come close to ending. So the end of the book is about the deep stuff. about why you sacrifice, about why you're doing what you're doing in life, and whether, again, it's in sport or anything else that you're doing in life. And so I thought I'd share this with you, and the way I'll begin this is, the first thing about sport, because again, you may still not be sold on that. You may say, yeah, okay, I understand a lot of people do sport, but is it really that important? I'm going to start off by telling you this. There has never been a human being that has ever existed that does not play. And if you haven't figured it out yet, sport is play. It's one form of play. There's kind of 4 forms of play. That's one of them. Now, I don't know about you, I find that sort of amazing. Every single human being plays. It must be important. I mean, God didn't make a mistake. There's something about this play thing that all of us have, and that it's important to all of us. It's important for us to recognize it in some ways. The greatest thinkers and writers of all time, people you would probably not suspect, and I'm not going to quote them all, but Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, St. Francis de Sales, St. John Henry Newman, St. Paul, I could go on and on and on. I mean, Plato, you talk about insight. He gave this insight, I think it was in about, probably about 325 BC. And his insight was this is a quote from Plato. "For he who changes the sports is secretly changing the manners of the young, and making the old to be dishonored among them and the new to be honored." What he was recognizing back in 325 BC is that sport, this play thing, was very powerful. It had an impact on what people were doing. And to what I'm telling you about pro-life, he was recognizing that depending on what you do in sport, the changes you make, the way that you conduct it, it has the power to affect whole generations, whole culture. Again, I'm not going to read these all to you. St. Augustine. Now, this is a quote, just the beginning. I'm just going to give you the first 3 or 4 sentences. "As a boy, I played ball games." I don't know about you, City of God. I'm not thinking, I'm not thinking St. Augustine playing ball games, okay? But he's talking about it. Again, Cardinal John Henry Newman talking about play. So this is not some sidebar issue or something that does not, it affects every human being. It's important for us to understand it. Even in Scripture, in Proverbs 8, wisdom played before God. "I was God's delight day after day, playing before God all the time, playing in the world, in God's earth. My delight was with humankind." Now it's interesting. Play is a lot like wisdom. Wisdom is done for its own sake. Play is actually done for its own sake. It's not done for some end. So the problem with sport is when it becomes a selfish work. And that's, to be honest with you, the argument I'd make. I think that's what's happened. That doesn't mean you can't be a worker. By the way, it's a misnomer to say an NFL player. He's not a player, he's a worker. He gets paid a lot of money to go do that. Now, we may imitate him. We're not workers, but we start to imitate the workers. And so we start to, even as fans, we have an expectation of work. We're almost like the managers and supervisors. You guys better get it together out there. And it's not a matter of play. And if you look at children playing, I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, the fascination, the absorption that they have is just remarkable. So this is something that I think can actually lift our eyes up to God. Has anybody ever been blessed enough to go over to Europe, maybe, and see the Sistine Chapel or the Vatican Museum? Oh, wow. I'm going to hang out with you, because apparently you're in the right places. I'm going to go with you. I get home Holy Land soon. I'd like to make a trip there. But I look at this and I say, why, when we go there, why are we elevated? And that's why cathedrals were originally built. I mean, St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City was built with the pennies and nickels of immigrants who had no money. And when you walk into it, if anybody's been in St. Patrick's or you've been in St. Peter's Basilica, I mean, my gosh, you have to almost go. You can tell somebody it's big, but until you walk into it, you have no comprehension of it. What is it about it? It lifts our eyes up. We contemplate God. It's remarkable. Artwork does the same thing. We're taken by it. It lifts us up. I would tell you, sport has the same capacity. If any of you saw, let's just take the London Olympics in 2012. There was an athlete by the name of David Rhodesia who ran the 800 meters, and he broke the world record. He ran the 800, I don't know if you know times, he ran it in 1 minute and 40 seconds. That is just incredible. But here's what's amazing. He led from the beginning of the race all the way through the finish. And when I watched him run, I am telling you, I'll challenge you, it's probably on YouTube, go watch it. And tell me if you're not fascinated. Tell me if you're not drawn in. Because when I looked at him, I'm thinking of God. Not that he's God, I'm thinking God made this man in the image and likeness of himself. That he was capable of this beauty, of the strength, of the endurance, of the form, to be able to move in this way. It lifts me up. Then you like basketball. I mean, seeing somebody take off from, behind the foul line and dunk a basketball. It is remarkable to just watch. It lifts us up to think about something greater than ourselves when we watch it. So, I will tell you this. This is how much we are involved in play. We will even pay to watch other people do it. I know, right? I mean, you're thinking, he's right, I've actually given money to sit in a seat and watch somebody else play. There's something not quite right about that. But it means that it's something that we're drawn to. It's something that is important to us. And again, we've got to take it back. As I said, if it becomes a selfish work, that's where the problem lies. St. Francis de Sales, I'll just give you a quote from him. He said, "So again, games of skill which exercise and strengthen body or mind are in themselves both lawful and good. Only one must avoid excess, either in the time given to them or the amount of interest they absorb. For if too much time be given up for such things, they cease to be a recreation and become an occupation. And so far from resting and restoring mind or body, they have precisely the contrary effect." So this thing about sport and play is really central and important to who we are as a people, as each individual person. I'm going to share something with you, because I found this thing I'm about to share with you to be true for every athlete I've ever worked with. It's a matter of degree, it's not a matter of does it exist. And I suspect that when you hear me take you through this, you're probably going to relate to it on some level. If not for yourself, which I think most of you will, but if you don't, you're certainly going to think of other people that this probably relates to or I'm about to share with you. I'll often ask a group, I'll say, what's the most motivating thing to any human being? And, somebody will yell out, money, power, fame. I mean, these are like the big ones, right? Everybody yells those out. And I would say, no. I mean, the most motivating thing to any human being is love. I know, love talk, right? Oh my gosh, I don't know it's come to a love talk. But that's it. It's love. I mean, it's what every human being wants. And I can kind of prove it to you. If I gave you $1 billion each, and I'll make you president, I don't know if you want to be, but I'll make you president, okay? But the only stipulation is you got to go live on a deserted island for the rest of your life. Is there anybody going to take that deal? Now, there was like a couple of tired moms I saw back there with trucks. They might take several weeks, but there's nobody going there forever. Why? If money, power, fame, or pleasure, any of these other things were truly the most motivating things, we would take the deal. But we don't take the deal because there's something missing on the island. People and potential for relationships. And therefore, it's not worth all those things. And by the way, what's interesting? You've seen in your own lives. What are people trying to get most of the time? Through money, power, fame. They want the love thing. It never works, but that's what they're trying for. That's what they're going after, and they don't get what they're really looking for. So here's the thing I've found just about every athlete I've ever worked with. I'm going to take you at 1 year old. No particular reason, I'm just picking 1 year old out. At 1 year old, all you know is mom and dad are perfect and they're the whole universe. That's all you know, okay? You're not having a big conversation at 1 year old in your head either. So, I'm not saying this is true. I'm not saying this is the way it was. But if for some reason you don't think mom and dad love you in a way that you get it or can understand it or anything else, believe it or not, you get a certain feeling. And the feeling comes from something you're actually believing. Must be me. Because here's mom and dad, they're perfect, the whole universe. If I'm not getting what I think I need from them, must be me. Now, here's what almost everybody does. They start to take things on. And when you take something on, you get a clap on the back. And when you get that clap on the back, you go, oh, I like that. That's like that love thing. I like that clap on the back, okay? But here's the problem. Let's say that when you first went to school, nobody knew how you're going to do. You go to school, and you come home, and your first report card, mom and dad look at it, and it's all D's. Like as in dog, okay? D's. Okay? And, whoa, all D's. I mean, they sit down, they talk to you, they try to figure out what's going on, right? And then next time you come home, next report card, all D's again. Well, now they're having teachers' meetings, they're making sure you're studying. You actually really are. You're trying hard, you're doing everything you possibly can. And the next report card, all D's again. I mean, okay, we'll get extra tutors, extra time. I mean, everybody's working, nobody's goofing off, everybody's trying, and you still have old D's. At some point, all they can say to you is, good job, keep trying, right? I mean, it's not like we're going to give up, but what else can you say? It's not from a lack of effort or desire or anything else. We're still trying to figure it out, obviously. But let's say the first time you went, you got all A's and B's. Oh, my son or daughter, the genius, right? And you get those bumper stickers on the back of vans, My son or daughter, the honor student, This is great. Now, sometime later, you come home with another report card, and it's all A's. Oh, you have 1 C. You think nobody's going to say anything to you about that? I know, you see, all those laughers are the ones, oh yeah, I know, I had that C, I'm telling you, I had to explain it. Why? Because A's and B's have become expected. You got to explain why you got a C. Ooh, this is not good. I was getting a pretty good clap on the back for the A's and B's, and now I got to explain why I got a C, which means the A's and B's I'm just supposed to do. That's just going to be acceptable. I'm not getting much of a clap on the back anymore for those. This is not a good feeling, by the way, okay? But I'm very adaptable. So are you. So, okay, I'll juggle. I'll keep the grade thing going, because I can't drop out of school. I got trouble for a C, so I got to keep the thing going, right? So I'll keep that going, but it doesn't look like I have it here. But I have a free hand, okay? I'm going to go and take on something new. Maybe it's athletics. So the first time you go out, nobody has a clue how you're going to do in athletics, and you go out and they say, wow, did you see her? Did you see how fast she is? Did you see how strong he is? Did you see his arm? I mean, oh, huge clap on the back. Fantastic, this is good. Juggle the grades, claps on the backs now, this is fantastic. You know where this is going, right? At some point, you don't perform as well. You have a, quote, bad game, something happens. What do people say to you? What happened? Because you've got to explain now why you didn't perform at the level everybody has come to expect and accept that you're supposed to be at. Man, this is not a good feeling. I was working really hard to get, to do well, and now I didn't have some good, output here, and now I'm in trouble in a sense, or I have to explain myself. Now, here's the thing. I don't know where the coaches in my life have gotten the extra 10%, but there is no 110%, okay? There is no secret slice under the pie, it's just 100, and you only have 100. And at some point, it doesn't happen usually when you're young, because you have a lot. That 100% takes a while to get used up, okay? But as you get older, as you move along, at some point, all 100% is used up juggling and maintaining things that have become expected, accepted, and you don't have 1% left to put in something new for a new clap on the back. And when you get to that point, you get a really bad feeling. It's going to be anger, depression, sadness, something, frustration. You're not going to like it at all. But this is what's happened. Being loved and being good enough has gotten tied together. They absolutely have nothing to do with each other, but we put them together. And if we don't recognize it, it's the thing that causes anxiety, nervousness. And I won't put anybody on the spot, but you could ask yourself, have you ever been nervous? Have you ever been anxious? Are you worried about stuff? You can ask yourself, why am I anxious and nervous and worried about stuff? It's because it's this good enough thing. If I don't do well enough, I'm not going to get the clap on the back, and I feel like I need this love thing. And if I don't get this love thing, in a way, and that sounds wild, I feel like I'm going to die. I got to have it. And so we'll do everything to try to get it. As a matter of fact, sometimes we spend more time trying to get this love thing from people that can't give it to us, and they can't give it to you. And yet we're dying trying to get every drop because we feel like we can't lose one drop of it, so I got to try to get it from everybody. And it makes life really hard for us. I'm going to jump on this thing about words, okay? Have to. Need to. Think how many times you say have to. How many people in here have ever said they have to go to work? Come on. Full arms, Okay. Everybody's probably said something. I have to go over and do this today. Did you really? Do you have to go to work? Well, students in here, do you have to go to school? No. Yeah, see, I got a couple that know the answer right now. I don't have to go. Okay? But you say, well, what do you mean I don't have to work? I mean, how am I going to live? Where am I going to get food? How am I going to have a car? How am I going to have a home? Well, what do you mean? Who says you have to have any of those things? Now, there's consequences to every action. So you go sit on the curb and never move again. Somebody will probably come take you away, but that could be your choice. I'm never moving. I'm not doing anything. Come get me. But this is my point. It's not a have to. And this is a funny thing about us human beings. Hard things we always say have to. We rarely say want to. So actually, you want to go to work. Wow, really? That's going to take some convincing. But it's true. I mean, it really is, because you don't have to go. You don't have to have anything. If you say you want those things, if you want those things for yourself or for the ones you love or whatever it might be, then you actually are choosing it. You actually really want to do it. And I'm telling you, I'm not playing with words here. It makes all the difference in the world in terms of how you feel about things and what you think. Because your feelings, your emotions come from what you believe. I'm going to kind of jump on because of time here. I'm going to jump to the part about the peak performance kind of things. I've often said that one of the greatest peak performances of all time is St. Peter walking on the water. And people will stop me and say, no, wait a second, that's not a peak performance, that's a miracle. I'm sure it is a miracle, but it's also a peak performance, okay? And I'm going to tell you why it's a peak performance. I'm also going to tell you what it has in everybody in this room. Similar, same as St. Peter. I'm going to tell you what you all have and what he did and what you also can do. Christ is coming across the water. Matter of fact, I'll read this little thing. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. Lord, if it is you, replied Peter, tell me to come to you on the water. He says, come. Now, at that moment, Peter's free will is fully intact. He does not have to get out of the boat. He chooses to get out of the boat because he wants Jesus. He gets out and he's so focused on Christ that literally he starts walking on the water. What happens? We all know the story, right? He walks a little bit, he suddenly becomes aware of wind, waves, tempest around him, and what happens? He starts to sink. Then he cries out to Christ to be saved. And Christ does save him and brings him into the boat. Now here's my point. If he had stayed focused on Jesus, he would have walked the whole way over and he would have got there. So think about ourselves. This is sports performance. This is like peak performance. When you are completely absorbed in detail on the task at hand, that is when you're going to be, quote, in the zone. That is when you're going to perform your best. And in a deeper level, if we kept our eyes on Christ the whole time, we don't get caught up in the wind and the waves and the tempest of our culture, our society, the negative things that are happening. Oh, isn't this terrible? Oh, we can complain about this and that. We stay focused on Christ, we're going to reach him. And we're going to bring probably a lot of people with us. We're also going to stay focused on him. So this thing of peak performance, you may say, okay, St. Peter had a peak performance. Miracle and a peak performance. But, Bill, I've never had any of those. Yes, you have. Think about this. Has anybody, I'm going to pick something out, I bet you somebody in this room's done this. Has anybody ever rolled up a napkin or something into a small bowl, threw it across the kitchen, and it lands in a small glass or something like that? Yeah, okay, the whole room practically, right? And by the way, when you do it, what's your first reaction? Wow, that was pretty good, Did you see that? Okay, now if you're like me, you'll go over and try to do it like 50 times over, and it's bouncing all over the floor, But this happens all the time, so I'll give you an example, though. These yogis and lamas, in Tibet, up on the mountain, okay? They go up there, right? They can slow their heart rates and respiration almost down to nothing. Down to like 10 beats a minute. 3 respirations a minute. It's just incredible what they're able to do. And then people say to me, yeah, but Bill, that's some guy up on a mountain in Tibet. I'm not going to do that for the next 50 years. So some holy guy in Tibet's doing that. Okay, let me give you another example. There's a young boy by the name of Jeremy Schill. He was 9 years old. He weighed 65 pounds. His father was in the garage working on his car, and I would never advise doing this. He has the car up on 4 jacks. He's underneath it, working on the transmission, and as he's trying to loosen something, the car starts moving, and the front end falls off the jacks onto his chest. Jeremy Schill, who is 9 years old and weighs 65 pounds, goes over to the front of the car and lifts it up enough so his father can breathe. He's 65 pounds. He's not taking human growth hormone. He's not taking steroids. He never lifted a weight in his life. He's picking up a 4,800-pound car. I know Olympic weightlifters, medalists, gold medal. They can't do that. They can't even come close to doing that. Now, Bill, you're going to say, that's an emergency situation. There must have been adrenaline flow. I'm sure there was. He's still 65 pounds and 9 years old, lifting up a 4,800-pound car. It means it was possible. Yeah, but that's an emergency situation. Does this ever happen not in emergency situations? Yes. Okay, so let me take somebody like Bob Beamon, if any of you followed the 1968 Olympics. Bob Beamon breaks the world record in the long jump by almost 2 feet, 22 and a half inches. I mean, that's mind-boggling. Up till then, I think records were broken by 2 inches at most at a time. He breaks it by almost 2 feet. There's a guy by the name of Ferrara Pippin. He's one of these free divers, the one that just, relax, they take breaths, and they just go down. 860 feet. That's the equivalent of a 70-story building. He can hold his breath for 9 minutes. Now, Bill, okay, that's good, but these are world-class athletes, I mean, they train, they can do these kind of things, Again, does this ever happen to regular people? Yes, like I said, I mean, you've done these kind of things before. My son, Joseph, he was like, I think 3, 4 years old at the time. He's in the garage, I'm working on the car, I look through the windshield to make sure he's still okay, and he's staring at our wall of the garage that has this pegboard in it, like these little holes. And I'm kind of looking at him, thinking, what's wrong with him? There's something wrong with him? He's just like staring at the wall, And suddenly I see in his hand a little artist paintbrush. It's missing the brush part on the end, but it's just like the stick part of it, okay? And suddenly he lifts it up and he throws it at the wall, and it spins like a fan, and it goes boom into one of those little holes. I said, Joseph, how'd you do that? He looks at me like I'm out of my mind. I don't know, I just threw it at the wall. So I go over, I can hardly get it out of the wall. I had to pull the thing almost with 2 hands. I get it out and thinking, well, maybe this always happens. Maybe it's not a big deal, right? I'm throwing it against the wall, it's not going in the hole, okay? I get up like a spear 2 inches away and I'm trying to get this thing in the hole. It's not going in that hole, okay? We're having dinner that night. I don't know how this happens, or what's going on in my family, right? We're eating popsicles, and one of the youngest ones drops the popsicle on the table, it bounces and it stands up on its side. I said, come on. Okay, so there's idiot dad dropping that popsicle stick 100 times. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to see, does this thing stand up a lot maybe? Maybe this happens all the time, It didn't happen. Okay, but it was possible because it did happen and somebody did it. So this is part of the problem of peak performances. They happen all the time, we only know we had them after they're gone. And we hope they're going to come back, but we're not sure when. Okay, there are reasons why they don't reproduce, and I'm going to just share a couple of them with you. First one is, I'm going to do this little thing with you here. That's not mine. I don't even know why that's up there. You probably said, well, that's going to be an interesting talk about the 3 birds. So, if you look at those 3 parrot type of birds, I don't even know what those are. You'll see that the bird in the middle is kind of looking like he's leaning against the other bird, or at least touching him. But what I want to know, is that bird actually leaning forward and not touching the bird on the left-hand side, or is he actually touching the bird on the left-hand side? I know, right? You're like, what the heck are you talking about? I mean, you're all staring at that. For a fraction of a second, when I had you looking at the detail, believe it or not, mind, body, and spirit, you were like up there on that bird. Like you were like, what is he talking about? Okay? Now, that is what focus is called. I mean, most people think focus is, well, yeah, I looked at the bird, okay, that's focus. No, that's not focus. It's attention to detail. The more detail you become absorbed in something, the more you're likely to perform at a very, very high level. The problem for all of us is that we get used to whatever it is we're doing. So if every day I came in and had you look at the birds, a lot of times, every day, after a while you'd be like, okay, I've seen the birds. I mean, it's like three color things up there. After a while you're not even looking at detail anymore. It's about detail, and that's what makes peak performance work. That's called in the zone, whatever you want to talk about, time slowing down, seeing things clear. It's the attention to detail. And so it's a little bit of a discipline to apply ourselves to see things in discipline in that way. The other is that, I go back to the 100%. You only have 100% at any given moment, okay? And so, I'll give you an example. Let's say we're at a basketball game, you're playing, okay, and you've just been fouled, and you're about to go to the free throw line. And let's think, okay, for you to make a free throw right now, basically there's only 2 things that can help you make a free throw. One is seeing the rim, and the other is feeling your body move. Nothing else in the whole world can help you at this moment. But as you're walking up to that line, the coach is yelling out something about what you're supposed to do after the first shot or when the play's up. What does that have to do with seeing the rim, feeling your body? Nothing. Take away 10% for that thought. You go up to the line, the guy standing there on the opposing team starts like trash talking to you, starts telling you negative things, right? What does that have to do with seeing the rim, feeling your body? Nothing. Take away 15% for that thought. Mom and dad are up in the stands with the video camera. What does that have to do with it? Nothing. Take away 15% for that. Maybe you missed your last 4 free throws when you went there before, right? Okay. So take away 25% for that. You get where I'm going. Your intent is to give your best. You're going to the line thinking your 100% is on this free throw. You've given up 70% to all other kinds of things. You might only have 30 or 20 or whatever it might be on the actual task, the actual thing that can help the ball go in. You hardly have anything on it, which means most likely you have a really good chance of missing that throw, that free throw. So it's about this 100% that you have being on the task at hand. And what's amazing about this, and I've never put this together until maybe the last few years, all of time is present to God. He has no past and he has no future. So to the degree I remain in the present moment is the degree I remain in perfect union with God. If I ruminate about the past or I get anxious about the future, I've left him. And so the challenge that I have in my life is, how do I stay in this present moment, in each present moment, as I move through life? And the beauty of this is, I've just described to you in athletics what's involved. It's staying in the present moment, and that's why truth works. It's not just in athletics, but it has to do with peak performance. Peak performance is about remaining in the present moment, about being in union with God. So it's, to me, somewhat comforting to know that when you're trying to perform at your very best, in whatever you're doing in life, that is actually part of what's happening. You're staying with God, hopefully, in that moment. I know I've got to go, right? Done? 3 minutes. Okay. I'm going to leave you with this. All of what I've just described to you requires some kind of sacrifice, which is love, okay? And if I told you to think about somebody right now in your mind that you love so much that you would die for them, get that person in your mind. I tell you that right now up on this podium, and this suddenly burst into flames. Are you going to come up here and get them? Yes, sir. I'm not feeling very enthusiastic. I'm the one up here right now. I'm not feeling good, okay? Are you coming up here for this person you said you'd die for that you love? Yes or no?
Yes!
Oh, I like that. Okay, good. Now, if I pulled out a flamethrower right now, I burn your wrist right down to the bone. Same burn, same pain. You're going to go nuts. You're going to roll on the floor around to the hall, attack me, I mean something. Same burn, same pain. One you can take, one you can't take. Pain without a purpose is intolerable to human beings. And so I'm going to maybe stop here today to say, you've got to ask yourself then, what is a strong enough purpose? And I will cut to the chase and just say, it's this. God is asking you one question in your life. He's saying, do you love me? And how we live our lives, the way we treat people, the things that we do, hopefully our words match, but it's by what we do that we're known. And so God puts us all down. He gives us opportunity. He gives us opportunity for sacrifice in our life. How we take that sacrifice on is how we're answering that question, do you love me? And so I'll leave you with my last quote. It's on sport and virtue. This is the quote I'd ask you all to memorize. Okay? On the litmus test. If I can memorize it, then I trust all of you can. Because trust me, when I went to Maryland, they told me my major was eligibility. So I know you can do this. Okay? And it was to all male audience, but it applies to women as equally as it does to men. But it goes like this. Sport, properly directed, develops character, makes a man courageous, a generous loser, and a gracious victor. It refines the senses, gives intellectual penetration, and steels the will to endurance. It is not merely a physical development then. Sport, rightly understood, is an occupation of the whole man. And while perfecting the body is an instrument of the mind, it also makes the mind itself a more refined instrument for the search and communication of truth, and helps man to achieve that end to which all those must be subservient, the service and praise of his Creator. That is by Pope Pius XII, an address that he gave called Sport, the Service of the Spirit. That should be the basis for everything that we do in play and sport. And we need to do that and reclaim the game and take back the culture, and I'm counting on all of you to do that. So I'm sorry to go so long. God bless you all. Thank you.